that you were going to have and 10 police officers assigned to the parks. What happened to that?
Well, just like everything else, we had a shortage of manpower, and that was anticipating growth within the organization. Remember, we were down, Mayor Pro Tem, as you know, we were down positions within the organization. As such, you have to prioritize. So what we did is we leveraged the resources we had to redirect it in terms of prioritizing the calls for service.
So we've gone from 11 to 1 based on having to redirect resources.
Yes, and now, again, as I mentioned previously, some of those positions have been vacant because we've had retirements, reassignments, and we had one of the officers injured as well.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, we entered into MOUs with several agencies, memorandum of understanding. Is that correct? So, did you not?
A couple of weeks ago?
Or recently, and in any of this time that we're experiencing a shortage of police officers?
We do have some MOUs, yes.
Okay, and do you not think that it would be better to have those police officers patrolling the parks as opposed to possibly serving warrants?
What MOUs are you specifically referring to?
Just anyone. It doesn't matter which one.
Well, some don't require resources, they require response. Those are the MOUs. So I need to know specifically because, again, I'm going to have to prioritize resources. If you're looking at the one for the U.S. Marshal's Office, that's one officer assigned to that multi-agency fugitive task force. When you look at force multipliers and you engage in that sort of an activity and an MOU, basically what you're doing is taking one officer from our organization, partnering with other agencies and other entities, and also accessing their databases. So you're multiplying that one officer by 12 or 15 plus a very robust data system. So
you're saying that those other men are patrolling our streets and our parks?
Well, that individual, as you're asking me about the MOU, that's
Correct.
one example where we've used one officer.
We're multiplying them.
And yes, as a force multiplier, we partnered with other entities. That's one example of an MOU. So without you specifically outlining what MOU, I can't address that question.
Well, just any MOUs. You know, when I hear MOUs and I hear that we're partnering, we're paying for these police officers, but we're taking them off the streets and we're taking them off parks and having them work with other agencies. I think that's fine, but I think if you can be more efficient and maybe working with some of these other agencies where maybe you can have one person working with all the agencies as opposed to keep pulling different officers. We're experiencing a shortage. I got a call a couple of weeks ago from one of my constituents where she had to wait 4 officers. There was a hit and run in her front yard. The car was moved to the middle of the street. It took 4 hours for a police officer to get there. When the police officer got there, she told this lady that she was sorry she was late. She was answering other calls, but she was the only person in that district at that time. So I know we have a shortage across the board. So I'm not surprised that we're experiencing this type of activity in the parks. The presence is not there, so we need to I think that's a priority. So we need to just keep that in mind, and whenever you're going to pull people off the streets or off parks, take that into consideration, maybe talk to the city manager and see how you could figure out to be more efficient in working with other agencies. I mean, everybody's cutting. The federal agencies are cutting. I'm sure they like having somebody else on staff that we, the taxpayers here, are paying for, but Chief, we need them on the streets.
Well, and let me expand on that a little bit, because you're saying that we're pulling them off the street. We're not pulling them off the street. We're, again, leveraging the limited resources that we have, again, to build and compound their capabilities. And the reason we're doing this is by partnering with federal agencies at a variety of levels.
Their first response, do they answer calls? Their first response is to the federal agency or to dispatch? When City of Laredo needs another officer, can they call them and pull them for whatever they're doing?
Depending on what the call is.
They can do that?
Yes. We can use them, yes. We have them involved in a variety of very complex
and they answer
major
calls.
Investigations.
They answer to dispatch.
Not calls for service, but calls. If we have a particular issue that is being raised, we as administrative staff have an obligation to assess where the need is. Then we will call this multi-agency task force to compound
Okay,
again.
but you've got, I mean, let's say there's an emergency situation. By the time you assess everything, there's going to be time loss. We need immediate action from these patrol officers.
Yes.
So if all that has to go through a lot of bureaucracy and assessments, then I don't think we're using our resources efficiently.
Councilman San Miguel, if it's an emergency, I'm not going to go to a task force. I'm going to look and leverage the resources we have immediately available. If I have to move resources from one district, one beat to another, I'll look at the immediacy of the situation, assess the situation from a tactical standpoint, and what resources are available to me at the time. I'm not going to resort to a task force unless they're readily available. And in some situations they are, but it's on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, well, if you could just please consider going back to the original agreement that you made with us, or the council back in August of 2008, where you were going to have one sergeant and 10 patrol officers working parks. And I believe that it was, I guess they were called the park police, and they would be addressing these issues that have been of concern in I guess, all the parks, or several parks.
Very good. Councilman Allende?